Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Accelerate webinar series hosted by the University of Denver's Daniels College of Business Executive Education Program. I'm David Worley, Executive Director. The Accelerate webinar series is designed to help you accelerate your capacity to deliver results for your organization. We call on some of our best faculty to provide you with insights relevant to your particular context. We intend for each webinar to be quick hitting and on point. So today's webinar will be roughly 25 minutes. We will start with a brief presentation from our faculty and then move to questions and answers towards the end. We will attempt to answer as many questions as we can live. And if we don't get to yours, we will make every attempt to get an answer to your question from our faculty member in writing in the next few days. At the bottom of the screen, you will find a Q&A icon. Feel free to submit a question whenever you see fit. For this third installment of the series, we are happy to welcome Kerry Plemmons. Kerry has been a professor of the practice at Daniels for over 20 years. Before teaching full-time, he was an entrepreneur, starting a popular retail coffee chain, before serving as an executive for Starbucks. Kerry is known for his remarkable engagement with students and for helping dozens of organizations achieve new levels of leadership success. It is our pleasure to have him today. Kerry, thanks for being with us.
I'm excited, David. Can't wait to get to work. Got good stuff to talk about. Do you want me to, is it time for me to go?
Yes.
Yeah, that means go. See, we've been practicing this a lot, and I have to hit the right screen, hit the right button. Yeah, again, like David said, my name's Kerry Plemmons. I'm a recovering entrepreneur, a recovering ski bum, a recovering a few other things. Now, what I want to talk about today, literally in about 15 minutes, is how do we do better at creating virtual teams in this really tough time? And I'm going to do exactly what this says. I'm going to start with empathy. Here's what we're discovering. Lots of research coming out about this, but the empathy for me says this time, these are tough times, and our teams are struggling. Our teams are really, really struggling. And they're struggling for a variety of different reasons. They're struggling because what they've discovered very recently, this just came out of INSEAD in France this week, is that actually it takes a lot more energy to look at a screen all day than it is to have a cup of coffee with a friend in the break room. And so what we're trying to figure out today is how do we mitigate these issues of people's stress, and how do we lower stress? How do we figure out how to create a better process for our teams, even though our teams are not we're not bumping into each other in the break room? So here's my answer. Our answers. We've kind of been brainstorming this for the last couple of weeks. We start with empathy. Everything's got to start with empathy. As a team leader, as a team colleague, whether you're on the team or leading the team, we're starting with empathy. And then we got to figure out how to ask questions. Lots of good research coming out about how to ask better questions and how to actually shut up and be a good listener. At this point, what we're also learning is that people are dying for communication. They're making stuff up. They're making stuff up on COVID. They're making stuff up on their organization. Are we going broke? Are we staying solvent? What's happening? And when we don't over communicate, we're in trouble. And you know, there's lots of good examples of good communication that's out there right now. And there's plenty of examples of really horrible communication that's out there. What you know, and you don't need the research from Harvard to see this, is that when I feel like people are being transparent and I hear what's going on, I feel better about my work and the effort I'm putting in. So we're going to figure that out. We're going to talk about that just a little bit in a second. But the other thing is we got to figure out how to proactively bump into our colleagues. And this is some of the interesting stuff that's come out lately. We miss those coffee chats. We miss literally that opportunity to just say, I'll see you in the break room. I'll bump into somebody over coffee. And I've got some data from Google about this. And I'm going to end my 15 minutes or so with this idea of how do we create bounded optimism. And I think as leaders, as colleagues, our job is to model this idea of bounded optimism, which comes out of McKinsey. So bounded optimism, I'm not, it's not perfect. No, we're really in tough times, but I'm optimistic that we're working on a good team. We're communicating with our team well, and we're figuring out what our purpose and what our goals are. So here's where we start. How do we get more empathetic and help think through the problem? And this empathy, and there's a guy named Daniel Pink that's written about this. There's basically two kinds of empathy. And the kind of empathy we generally think of is what's called emotional empathy. I feel what you're feeling. I understand your pain. I feel emotionally empathetic with your stress. But that's not the end of empathy. It's only half of empathy. The other half of empathy is called cognitive empathy. And cognitive empathy is I can think what you're thinking. I can think how you're thinking about your bank account, how you lost your 401k. I can be cognitively empathetic. I can think about how you're thinking about this project. I can think about how you're considering the work that you have to get done. And of course, there's always an emotional aspect of that. But what we're asking people to do these days is to really practice this idea of cognitive as well as emotional empathy. What's being said, what's not being said. The data on this is kind of interesting. We are so good at reading body language. There's a woman that I'm just loving right now. Her name's Kate Murphy. She wrote a book called You're Not Listening. And what this research goes like this. So the research was a bunch of kids, teenagers and kids that would go to camp. And they took away all screens for 2 weeks, and they tested their emotional and cognitive empathy and reading body language and such. And they did that and then the other group had their screens, and we're looking at the screens all day long. And what the impact of this study is very simple, is that when you take away screens, we get more empathetic. It's natural. We're naturally good at listening and seeing and feeling what people are thinking. And we're naturally good at this stuff. But when we're staring at screens, we lose the ability. It's funny. And you see TVs and you see, whether it's a cell phone or anything else, I'm not telling you to get off Zoom, we can't. But what we have to do is step up the proactiveness, the proactive aspects of being empathetic, because we have to get better at this sort of questioning and listening. So part of empathy, part of this communication and part of this over communication is, people think about communication as often a one-way street. It's not. Communication is listening as much as talking. Here's another little example. So this morning I was getting a feed from the Great Ideas Club. And so are you a narcissistic listener or a empathetic listener? So here's the basic premise. So my dog ran away 3 days ago, and we got her back. So your response could be one of two things. You could say, oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. Please tell me more. What happened to your dog and how did you get it back? That's empathetic listening, because I'm really engaged in what you said. Narcissistic listening, which is probably the other end of the bell curve, is, oh, you know what? I lost my dog 2 days ago too. I lost my dog. Let me tell you about my problem. And so Stephen Covey used to call this listening with our own autobiography. That's not listening at all. Listening is saying, please tell me more. Let me hear I'm not critiquing, I'm just listening. I'm really shutting up. I'm really focused on what you have to say. And I'm going to get so much better at the communication process, where this is so important for teams. There's an article that came out not too long ago on cracking the code of collaboration, this is a cover of a Harvard Business Review a couple of months ago. That probably made a lot of noise. So cracking the code is listening. Cracking the code on collaboration is teaching people to listen, teaching people to really engage with what's going on. And what they're finding with teams is that teams get so much more efficient, so much more effective when they shut up. You guys all know the rules of improv. When you're listening, you're saying yes and. You're not saying yeah but. You're not saying no, can't, won't. What people want to hear with listening is just like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler used to say in how to practice improv. Say yes and everything. A guy named Satya Nadella, who was one of my favorite leaders, CEO of the world's largest by market cap corporation until Amazon took him over, but it's Microsoft. So Satya Nadella took over Microsoft about 5.5 years ago. According to Bloomberg, according to a cover article of Bloomberg about 2 months ago, in the last 5 years, he has not been heard to say the word no. He says yes and. How might we? What's that look like? What would it look like if we did what you are suggesting? And so he is deflecting the no, proactively not saying no, to support and listen to his teammates, so that the whole team feels supported. By the way, Satya Nadella, the stock price has gone up about 5x since he took over. So how do we get better at listening? How do we get better at engaging for impact? So in this time, how are you doing at engaging your team members? How are you doing at asking for help when needing? And what are we doing to really focus on that bounded optimism of the positive messaging? What are we doing? How are you engaging for impact? And so this is that sort of a question I would ask. So what are you working on right now that's going to help your team? What are you thinking about? What's your process right now that's going to help your team? What are you thinking about? What are you doing right now that's going to help your team be successful, feel like you're a great teammate, a great team member? What are you doing and how are you connecting? And we know you can't just rely on bumping into them anymore. You're not going to bump into them. You got to proactively bump into them. We got to think about how to engage for impact and engage for this clarity. One of the things I've seen all the time, bad teams. Well, we're going to get better. We're going to work harder. It doesn't work. We got to be really, really specific. We got to do this, which I just love. It's this idea. We got to zoom in and say, okay, what's the progress? What's our KPI? What's our key performance indicator? What are we doing right now that's going to really have an impact on our team as a whole? We zoom in every single time, and we got to set up a rhythm. I'll talk about that in just a second. But we got to set up some sort of a rhythm so people feel like they know and they're being rewarded on their progress. There's another researcher named Teresa Mabla at Harvard says, it's called the progress principle. We as human beings want to feel like we're making progress every single day. When I feel like I'm not making progress, I'm not having impact, I don't know what I'm doing. So we zoom in every single meeting. We have some sort of a rhythm. We have some sort of a KPI. We have a segue in, segue out of our meetings. And we're zooming in for progress with our team. And we're zooming out for purpose. As a leader, we got to say, what are we trying to accomplish? What's our big goal? What's our overarching impact? What are we really trying to accomplish? And you're zooming in for progress, zooming out for purpose. But literally at every meeting, you kind of got to touch on both of those things. Not kind of, we got to touch on both of them. And the less specific you are, the less likely it is that your team is feeling good about being on the team. We know that what it takes to build a team are things like trust and relationship safety and all the things that Patrick Lencioni taught us years and years ago. We've got to figure out how to build trust in this really tough time. How do you build trust when people are stressed out by staring at these stupid frickin' screens all day? Did I say that out loud? We're stressed because we're not going to our third place. Back in the old day, we had a home, we had an office, and then we had a third place. It could be, Starbucks. I still have Starbucks stock, go there. But we have to have a third place. Right now, our first, second, third place is, we go from our kitchen table to our office, to our bedrooms, but it's, our home is our office, our home is our nightclub, our home is our restaurant, our home is our kennel, our home is our school for our kids. We don't have a second place, we don't have a third place, and we need to realize that not having those other two places is diminishing our trust. So we got to figure out how to have a rhythm, how to create. This is from a guy named Vern Harney, Scaling Up in the Rockefeller Habits guy. I really love this stuff. But we got to figure out how to create this rhythm, create a rhythm so we're having a daily 10-minute meeting, huddle, progress, purpose, talking about both, a weekly meeting, whatever you want to do. But your team is really depending on you to set this meeting rhythm, set them in place, and we got to figure out how to make it positive. We're not bumping into each other, by the way. This is where this whole idea of we got to be proactive about bumping into people. Google they created their cafeterias based on the idea of they want the Google bump. The Google bump says that if you sit at this cafeteria, you have to ask permission to sit down because you will bump into somebody and it's too tight. There's plenty of food and there's plenty of room in case you can't tell, by the way. But they put the tables and the chairs in such a way that you have to ask permission of somebody else to sit down. It's called the Google bump. You bump it when Steve Jobs designed the new spaceship that's the Apple. He designed it in such a way that people would have to bump into each other in the corridors, on the way to the bathroom, on the way to the cafeteria. But we're not bumping into each other anymore. So we got to figure out how to create that virtual break room. I'm going to virtually, whether it's a phone call or a Zoom or a Skype or a Microsoft Teams, I don't care which one you're using these days, but we got to create a virtual rhythm to our virtual bump so that we are staying engaged with our teammates. Here's the data. Trust is diminishing. Engagement is diminishing. Not because of nobody's doing things wrong, but because we're not proactively creating trust with our teams. If you have a great team and you really have somebody that you've been working with for years and you just love them, they got a lot of trust, and there's lots of trust. But without that sort of trust that's been built up over the years, we got to figure out how to build that trust virtually. And the data would say it's really being diminished right now. We build trust by talking to each other, by having a cup of coffee, by bumping into each other at the coffee shop or something else. But what we're doing right now really reveals so much about who we are as leaders and who we are as colleagues. Who you want to work with and who you want to work with tomorrow. There's so much that, I mean, we're all under a test. This is a test, and it's a test of leadership. It's a test of communication. It's a test of listening. It's a test of empathy. I hope that everybody on this call I hope you're passing the test. But you don't pass the test by being inactive. You pass it by being proactive. Here's my last point. My last point is that we as leaders, as colleagues, have to create this idea of bounded optimism. Again, this is a McKinsey thought. But the McKinsey thought says that we need to be optimistic that we're going to get above this, but we know that right now we're in a storm. And in some places, it's a bad storm. It's a tough storm. It's a 40% down in revenue and layoffs, and it's a really, really tough storm. As leaders, we still have to step up with purpose and progress every day to say, here's how we're going to get out of it. We're going to put our foot on the accelerator. We will be successful. We're going to keep proactively building our team and building this sort of bounded optimism, but we're going to make it happen. I'm really grateful. It looks like my time is probably up. So I'm going to shut up and say, what questions might you guys have?
Kerry, thank you so much. And as a reminder to the audience, if you have questions, please put them in through the Q&A portal down at the bottom of your screen. We've got a great question here from Uni, who asks this one, Kerry. We have been in the work from home mode for 6 weeks now. As we get further and further into this mode of operations, I'm seeing some challenges with team collaboration and chemistry. Do you have any recommendations on how to address this?
I love it. Hey, Uni, how you doing, man? Yeah, this is exactly what I want to say. I mean, this is exactly where we're at. My word is proactively bump into people, because the research is suggesting that we're losing trust because we're not bumping into people. And if you've got a good relationship to start with, then just reminding people proactively that we're going to have a 10-minute huddle every day, and we're going to ask lots of questions, and we're going to start with all these sort of ideas on this list, I think we'll be fine. But here's what I really am worried about, is if we stop proactively bumping and assuming that this is going to be over soon and we'll all be fine. It's not. That's bad leadership. Bad leadership. What we have to think about is how to proactively literally do what's on this list. This is my list. But we got to be empathetic every single day. We got to talk to people every day. We got to over communicate every single day. We got to figure out how to bump into people and create this bounded optimism. That's my answer, and I'm sticking to it, Uni. But Uni, give me a call if you want to talk more.
So, Kerry, we have two questions that have come in that are very, very similar. One is from Eliza Cross and the other one from Jason O'Lear. Eliza asks, would love specific examples of a virtual bump. And Jason asks, looking for concrete ideas to create the virtual break room. How is this different from a daily, weekly, work-focused meeting?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a big distinguish here, but okay, so let's do one at a time. So ideas for the virtual bump. It doesn't happen by accident, again. So a couple of things that I've been hearing about. I love this one. So you got 5 people on your team, say at 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock on Friday, I'm going to have pizza and a beverage delivered to your door. And you call Blackjack Pizza or whatever. I'm not promoting anybody, but you call somebody and have every member of your team get that virtual pizza. They got a virtual pizza. Maybe it's a virtual beer. I don't know. It's not up to me to decide what that looks like. But we got to, as leaders, proactively and as colleagues, we got to do the same thing. And you guys are all doing this, but it's the virtual happy hour. It's the virtual breakfast. Hey, you guys, everybody get their bowl of cereal. Let's just share our cereal this morning, and we're going to eat and we're going to talk. But we're going to have 10 minutes on Zoom, on Slack, on Microsoft Teams. Yesterday I was on Uber Teams. That's a new one on me. But whatever it is, you're proactively doing it. It doesn't have to be a video, but it's got to be proactive. And I think you can do it audio. I'm a fan of the video. One of the things we need to learn about video is that you've got to really limit it, because staring at that screen for more than 30, 40 minutes, you start accomplishing things. And what they're proving, and this is out of Harvard, is you do things in 10, 15-minute bursts, take a break, literally tell people to go get another cup of coffee, go outside and get some vitamin D, and come back in. So the answer is put in place a plan. Every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, every Tuesday, whatever you're going to do at 2, at 10, we're going to meet. It's going to be 15 minutes. We're going to talk about progress. We're going to talk about purpose. We're going to keep moving.
There's lots of great questions coming in. Many of them have to do with how you actually operate virtual meetings. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, Kerry, and throw you a different kind of question from Kelly Martin. She says, I was practicing bounded optimism. Then the first reduction in cost caught my team by sheer surprise. Now I feel like I am trying to be in the storm and above. What do you have to say about that, Kerry?
Well, first of all, I'd say I'm really sorry. I am sincerely sorry. I can't imagine how that feels, and it bothers me. It hurts, and it hurts when I hear really good people being laid off. And it hurts, I think, when I hear about organizations not communicating well. And so this by surprise thing, I'm sorry, but I don't think surprise is. I mean, COVID was the surprise. Okay, that's an acceptable surprise. Everything after that shouldn't be a surprise. If we got reduction in force coming, we got layoffs coming, I personally believe that we need to be really empathetic about that, really communicative. And I think, I've seen great examples, frankly, University of Denver. Our chancellor and our provost are doing a fantastic job with weekly updates, budgets. Here's what it looks like. Here's what we may have. And I don't think there's surprises coming from the University of Denver right now. And I celebrate that. Let's park that over there. So back to the second part of your question. How do you get back to optimistic? Well, look up, not down, literally. There's a whole data on neuroscience. Why I go outside and stare at the sky, and I bring my eyes up. It actually helps me. The more pessimistic I am, the more I look down. There's a bunch of stuff out there on mindfulness, kind of not my topic today, but the mindfulness that says that you got to dwell in your grief. Don't try to gloss over the grief. Dwell in it. It's the 5 stages. Go with it. And yeah, this sucks. This hurts. This is painful. I'm losing colleagues and I hate it. And then we figure out how to create that resilience. And as leaders, sometimes you fake it till you make it, frankly. I am optimistic. I do have a plan. Here's what I think we're going to do. We have some scenarios that are going to come out of that. And I believe that this is a great team, and I believe we're going to stay intact. Always be, stay with the empathy, but then figure out how to first refresh yourself, take care of yourself and take care of your own mindfulness so that you can feel like there is another place out there. There's some stuff on mindfulness that I really recommend you look into about how to refresh when you are being beaten down. And boy, we are being beaten down, and we need to figure out how to refresh.
So folks, you're sending in so many great questions. Like I said earlier, we will make every effort to get all of you a written answer in the next few days if we don't cover your question here. But we're going to close with this question. It's a really good one from Ben Rizzuto. How can team members that truly enjoy and want to have these virtual collaborative meetings overcome a team manager that doesn't see the value in these types of meetings?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm laughing, Ben, because I think we have that question too many. I have a 2-part answer. First answer, you can't change the boss. You can't change the manager. You don't have control over that. So, the serenity prayer, I'm going to focus on what I can control, and I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to show my leadership, and I'm going to be proactive, and I'm going to have bounded optimism in spite of that person. That's A. The second, which is far more complicated, is how do you communicate with that person about the value of what's missing? And so I do this by driving people crazy with questions. Back in the day, I would say, hey, how might we? What are you thinking? How could we? And the worst thing you could do to a boss is say, why don't you? Why didn't you? Don't say that to your boss ever. And I don't think being bitter that your boss isn't that perfect leader that's just not useful either. But you drive them crazy with bounded, optimistic questions. How might we? Boy, I'm so excited. How could we work on this a little differently? How could we meet more often? How could we communicate better? How might we? And you really drive them crazy with sort of the optimistic question. I really want to work better. How might we work better? It's the how might we is my favorite question. You don't go to your boss with why didn't you? You go with how might we? And I think wouldn't it be cool if, those kind of things are statements that are questions that really sort of help elevate the the appreciative inquiry to your boss. There's another book out there, but we need to be appreciative and optimistic and ask really positive questions like, how might we? No, why didn't you?
Kerry, as the last word from you on this one, before you turn your slides off and before we close down, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience? They've asked great questions, and it's been an amazing conversation. Anything else you'd like to add for us in this difficult time?
Just, I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I love working with people who are in the network. I write for the brand of the Daniels College of Business, the University of Denver, and I love every opportunity to work with you guys. David can share my email and my cell phone number, and I welcome your phone calls. Call me anytime. We'll be glad to brainstorm.
Great. Thank you very much, Kerry. Thanks for being with us. So folks, thanks for joining in. Next Thursday, April 30th, we will host Mike Myers discussing ways artificial intelligence is changing the workplace. On May 7th, we'll follow that with Allie Boyd speaking on providing excellent coaching and feedback. And on May 14th, Bo Saruzic will be teaching about team resiliency. You can find all these dates, register, and see past webinars, including this one, on our webpage. To do so, just simply Google the Accelerate webinar series at the Daniels College of Business. For those of you who might be interested, we still have space available in our upcoming course on strategic finance, which starts on May 6th. And if you're interested in honing those advanced skills, this is a great opportunity. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We hope you gain new insight that will accelerate your impact in your community, your organization, and the world. From the University of Denver, Daniels College of Business Executive Education Program, we look forward to seeing you again on the Accelerate webinar series. Thanks.